All right, everyone, welcome into Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports. This is episode 38. This is August the 16th, 2022. We are so close to football season. Uh, 2 weeks away from this upcoming Thursday is the first week of college football. First full week. Actually, next Saturday, not this Saturday, but the 26th is the first regular season games of college football. And around the state of Tennessee and other states across the country is the first week of high school football. So things are heating up here in America. And joining me from Brazil to talk about all of the football that's coming up is Gustavo Tomazeli, Americana, Sao Paulo, Brazil, as always. Gus, how are you doing? I'm sure you're missing football season up here.
Oh yes, I do. You mentioned high school football season. I remember last year we were at the opening weekend game in East Tennessee football, high school football.
Yeah, it was
I
a
remember,
Fulton South Doyle, I think, right?
yeah, it was South Doyle versus Fulton. The game was at South Doyle. It was still, somehow kind of like with a lot of COVID protocols, a lot of restrictions. Wasn't kind of like the full experience, but was a nice moment. I think it was one of the first the only game I think we covered together. We was like a good moment, and excited to talk about football coming up. I know there's a lot of NFL topics. Even it's still preseason, there's a lot of rumors going around, and here in Brazil also football like the soccer season is kind of going to their peak, and we're going to talk about the is Palmeiras dominating and they're going to win it all. But first we're going to talk NFL because was the first weekend of NFL preseason full, and and there are some questions from some quarterbacks, right, Nick?
Oh, for sure. In NFL preseason, you know, there's not a lot usually you can take away from these preseason games, and it is very foolish to think that we can fully predict what's going to happen based on what happens on a series of two of preseason football. But clearly, I think the most notable storyline of the preseason weekend was in Jacksonville Friday night when Deshaun Watson returned to the field for the first time in, what was it, 536 days or something like that. It's been a very long time, and of course, he came out to a chorus of boos, and and the Jags fans were giving him all kinds of hell. With the "you sick, you know what" chants, and I'm sure if Watson plays any more this year, we're going to hear that some more. I can only because here's the thing: the Jacksonville Stadium is only half full. Can you imagine? Because right now, if the 6 game suspension were to stand, his first game is at Baltimore. Like the Ravens fans, that they will in unison chant "you sick," like you know, um, it would just it would be insane unless the NFL were to like come out and ban it for the fans. But I think that would just make them do it more.
Yeah, if Roger Goodell knows something, is that if you try to ban it, they will make one and more. It's like the the side effect of trying to be imposing the fans something. But yeah, that's right. I feel like that's what the Deshaun Watson's gonna be a scapegoat for the opposing fans. He'll be like the villain. He is now the villain of the NFL because any team that would play against the Cleveland Browns are going to be, using you know, that fact of Deshaun Watson and all the, you know, outside of the, of all the issues that he's facing legally to kind of, make him the villain or trying to distract. I think Jacksonville, which isn't even a rival, I feel like if it wasn't imagine if a preseason game was in Cincinnati or in Pittsburgh, there would be even more. I think there would be the stadium would be like 80% full.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like as I said, the first 2 games right now, if the 6 game suspension were to be upheld, and considering now there's a new judge in the case, they brought in a district attorney from New Jersey to now be the arbitrator. Um, if he reverses what Sue Robinson ruled a few weeks ago about the 6-game suspension, then I think it's very likely that we could see Deshaun Watson not play at all this year. And I think if I'm the Browns, honestly, you might want that. I mean, yes, Jacoby Brissett definitely doesn't have the talent of Deshaun Watson, but I I don't know if the distractions that Watson brings is going to be worth the problems that he'd cause, because you're going to start off the season with Jacoby Brissett with at least 6 games at the minimum. And Jacoby Brissett, with the roster that's around him, he has Nick Chubb in the backfield. He has Amari Cooper, Jarvis Landry. Yeah, it's a pretty good roster. He's not going to have to, play hero ball. This is a much more talented roster that he has here than what he had in Indianapolis a couple of years ago. They're going to be able to be competitive and win football games with Brissett. And if the first free series of what we saw on Friday night from Watson's an indication is that he's nowhere near game shape. Now, when you look at the stat line, he was 1 of 5, 7 yards. There were a few drops in there that there were good throws by him, but he also had some really bad overthrows. You could tell he wasn't too comfortable in the pocket. Didn't look nearly as quick as he used to, because he ran, I believe, once or twice. Now, granted, that weren't complicated plays. Are not going to show everything in the preseason. So it's really, really hard to tell whether or not Deshaun Watson truly is that far off from his peak. But if I'm a Browns fan, I'm concerned that you've really screwed up, because this is already a big enough risk. Taking on a guy that has so much baggage that you're going to take so much criticism. Like, even if this guy comes out and wins you a Super Bowl, there's going to be people who, effectively deny you
or,
the triumph
or
of
even
that
or,
because,
or even discredit it.
yeah, exactly. Because, they're going to see Deshaun Watson as an illegitimate superstar because of what he's done to women and just the evidence. And then they also, like, before the game, they try to do the PR move where they have the female reporter for the Browns interview him, and he's like giving this apology, but like it's like the millionth apology with her, and it doesn't seem that sincere. It's just a weird time to drop it. So you already are getting the ire of the public. Like, if you're the Browns themselves, the organization, you're getting the ire of the public against him anyway. Then he goes out and doesn't play well at all. And now we're just sitting here like, you spent $230 million on this guy. Are you going to spend $230 million on this guy? I'm not convinced this is going to work, because for that amount of money, you have to win a championship. We have to remember, this is a franchise that has won only one playoff game in the last 20 years.
And the playoff win was in an empty stadium in Pittsburgh, and Big Ben was probably his worst playoff game ever.
Well, I mean, Ben Roethlisberger threw for over 500 yards that game. Now, all that was in garbage time. But I mean, the Pittsburgh Steelers had probably the worst first quarter in playoff history.
Yeah, that was the Cleveland had all the momentum and all the luck in that game, and Pittsburgh had all the screw ups ever. But and I feel like it was weird. At one point, it made sense for Watson to play, because it was like, hey, let's have him show up, show that he's our quarterback. We want to see him in a Browns uniform, but still, like, he played so few downs. He, as you said, only threw for 7 yards. So he had no first downs and only 7 yards. So why you go to all that trouble, him exposed to fans, not to the media, because he wasn't available for interviews after the game, as you said, only with the Brown sideline reporter. I probably she had to, like, probably was something planned before the game,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel like all that trouble for a preseason, I don't think was all worth it.
Oh no, it was definitely not worth it. Now it just, because here's the thing. I mean, they've lost fans over this. I mean, there are numerous people that we're Browns fans are like, I give up. I'm not following it. They're following Baker Mayfield to Carolina. They're choosing other teams to root for. Like, this is a massive gamble, and they're playing with fire. And if he ends up bombing in Cleveland, then it's going to be a long time, I think, before the Browns organization truly comes back from this. So
the only winner at that night was Jacksonville Jaguars revenue, because probably there were a lot more fans in that game than it would have been without Deshaun Watson. Probably a fewer thousand people would be like, you know what? I'll go on a Friday night to watch a preseason if I can boo and give a hassle to a guy. And probably a lot of around the people in the area probably were Georgia fans or even Florida fans or even South Carolina fans who did not particularly like Deshaun Watson in college.
well, I mean, I don't even think it's that. It's the fact that this guy um, is accused, and there seems to be really good evidence of him sexually assaulting women. I
Oh
think
yeah,
that's enough to harass a guy at a football game. You know?
no, of course, I'm not denying that. I'm just saying there was even this factor was of course major, but of course it kind of, and the attendance of the game wasn't that bad. It was 54,000 fans, 81% of the stadium capacity.
Yeah,
So
which
it
that's what's
wasn't.
for a regular season game down there, especially
Yeah,
in recent years. Now, I'll say this too on the other side, just real briefly. I thought Trevor Lawrence looked pretty good, and Travis Etienne. This is a guy to really watch because he didn't get to play at all last year in his rookie season. He had a preseason ACL injury, so this is his true rookie season. If you're in fantasy, Etienne, I think he's going to be a guy to watch because Trevor Lawrence and Etienne have that connection back at Clemson. And even though I didn't like that pick when Urban Meyer made it last year, and it really sidelined James Robinson, who had a great rookie season in his own right back in, what was it, 2020? I do think that Etienne has a lot of volume potentially. He's going to get a lot of catches out of the backfield. He's going to be great for fantasy purposes, especially. So I really like that Lawrence Etienne connection. Christian Kirk didn't really play from what I remember, but that's a guy I'm really interested to see. Can he be a true wide receiver one? Because he wasn't a wide receiver one out in Arizona with DeAndre Hopkins on the other side. So I don't know if he's truly worth the $72 million for 4 years that he's being paid, but we're going to find out. But I do think Lawrence will take a step forward this year for Jacksonville.
oh yeah, I feel like his second, and to think about it, the season that really was the season that flourished kind of for Joe Burrow was his third season, because his third season that he his second season that he found, I think probably Trevor Lawrence not gonna have the second season that Joe Burrow had going to a Super Bowl, but I think it's going to be a significant improvement because Joe Burrow also got injured midway through his rookie season.
And also, you got to remember, too, Burrow in the second year also got one of his favorite college connections. Remember, he got Jamar Chase.
Chase,
And
yeah.
now Trevor Lawrence, he's getting one of his favorite college connections in Travis Etienne. Now, the Jaguars do not have a Super Bowl roster at
No,
all.
I'm not saying.
I would be stunned if the Jacksonville Jaguars made the Super Bowl. I'd be stunned about them making the Super Bowl this year than I was about Cincinnati making it last year. And I was pretty stunned when they made it.
Their odds to go to the Super Bowl is 10,000, like 10,000 plus.
Yeah, like even if they're competitive with Indianapolis and Tennessee for the AFC South, I'd be stunned.
Yeah, I think the Jaguars only have better odds than the Houston Texans and the Houston Texans, New York Jets, and the Detroit Lions.
The Lions, though, I will say this: I've looked at their schedule; they have a pretty favorable schedule. Do not be shocked if the Lions are a sneaky wild card contender. That might be a hot take.
Even with Jared Goff.
Yeah, because here's the thing: the NFC to me is not that good. It's a much weaker out of the two conferences. There's not as many great teams. If they can win some of their toss-up games, they've got a couple of toss-up games in their schedule. And I really like what they've done with their drafting recently. You obviously last year they got P. Sewell from Oregon. Their offensive line has gotten a lot better. This year they went out and got Aiden Hutchinson with the second overall pick. And if you saw him on Friday night, he looked pretty good.
I mean,
Made some big plays. So the line of scrimmages are getting a lot better. I like some of the weapons they have. Of course, you have you know, Amon-Ra St. Brown as a receiver. I think he's going to have a really good year. You have the running back DeAndre Swift, who made a lot of big plays last year. Yes, Jared Goff has a massive ceiling. He isn't going to, I think, do very well. But I think when you look at their schedule, I really do think that they have a sneaky chance at competing for a wild card. Now, if they somehow make the playoffs, they're not going past the wild card weekend. But do not be shocked if the Lions are at least in contention at the end of the season.
and their first 5 games are winnable. They
Yeah,
face they face they face uh, NFC the NFC the AFC the 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 Philly and the contenders, the NFC East, which probably they're more favorable to win Washington than Philadelphia, but probably Philadelphia has like a 75-35 and Washington's like 50-50. Then they have the Minnesota Vikings. Of course, I feel like this is their hardest game, but then they face Seattle and New England. So probably they can start 3-2. It's not crazy to think they can start 3-2.
yeah. And then after that, they go to Dallas. They're not going to win that game. Miami is a better team on paper, but can we trust Miami? That is the question. Um, Green Bay, they still have Aaron Rodgers, but how much do I trust the rest of that team? I I, I think they'll have a really good defense, but the receiving core scares me. I think Chicago is probably going to be the worst team in the NFC North, in my opinion. They got to play the Giants. I don't think they're very good. They host Jacksonville. That's a chance for a winnable game right there. They go to New York to the Jets. That's a chance for a winnable game. To the Panthers, that's a chance for a winnable game.
I mean, if you look at their schedule, let's think about really their games that would say, they're really will be a surprise, a shocker if they lose. Green Bay twice, Buffalo, and maybe Dallas. That's the only 4 games that I don't see them winning. The rest,
Patriots. I'd add Patriots to that list. I don't think they're winning in New England.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, 5, but five out of 17.
Yeah, I think from there, I think they lose to Philadelphia. I think they'll split with Minnesota, so that's 6. I think they'll lose to Miami. That's 7.
So maybe they can be like a 9-7 or 10
9
and
and 8. I think
9
probably
and 8.
9 and 8. I think they'll be somewhere around 500. And in this NFC, that might be enough to get into the playoffs. That might be enough.
I mean, if you think about the last few seasons, uh, it's not crazy to think a 500 team making the playoffs.
Yeah. They got to find a way to win 1 or 2 of those games we don't think they're going to win. And they can do that.
They have really to probably sweep Chicago, at least. They have to sweep Chicago.
Yes, I would agree with that. If they can somehow sweep Minnesota, that would really help as well.
Because last year, the last team who made the playoffs in the NFC was the Philadelphia Eagles with 9-8.
Yeah. Yeah. So they can have a similar type season to Philly from last year.
I mean, last year they were the worst team in the league, so it would be a really improvement.
Yeah. So I'm saying if you're a betting man, like the Lions, that's a team that I think has a chance. Because I go to this website. I'm gonna have to show this before the season at some point. There's a website where you can pick every single NFL game, and I've done this a couple of times, and every single time I have the Lions really, really close.
What is the website?
It's called nextplayoffpredictors.com. Actually, if you want, actually, let me share my screen. I'll just show the latest run that I did, and it's from a couple of days ago. Let's see, window. Sure. Let's see. Can I share it? Because this is quite interesting. Some preferences.
For those who are listening at Spotify, me and Nick are, discussing NFL predictions right now, and Nick is about to show a website that he can, you know, like give the outcomes of the games.
Right, right.
In like a simulator.
Yes, it's called playoffpredictors.com. Let's see. Dang, it's going to have to make me. So, can I just let me do it like this. Show this screen. Why is it not letting me? Chrome has lost permission. Well, okay. Well, if I would have to restart it, which would kick me off. But anyway, I'll have to show it like next time. But in this prediction, I have the Lions at 8-9. I have the Vikings at 9-8, which would have the Vikings would be the last team in, and the Lions would be the last team out.
Is the website called next.playoffpredictors.com?
Yes.
I can share the screen. I got the website. No. Let me show here. So then we can do when the season starts in like 2 weeks in our not the next week, the other week the episode. Then we can do our predictions from here, and then we save it to see if you got it right or wrong.
Yeah. Let me see. I'm trying to download it. Let me see if I can, because I might be able to just share it as a file. Oh, now, I think we have it now. Yeah, so this is what I have right here. So, as you can see, you pick every single game throughout the course of a season, all the way through the playoffs. So, like, if I go back to, okay, well, it's not letting me go anywhere. But anyway, so this is the final results that I have, and so in the AFC West, I have the Chiefs winning at a 14-3, the Broncos at 11-6. The Chargers in third, the Raiders in fourth. And you see right next to the teams is what seed they would have. So I have the Chiefs at 1 at 14-3, the Bills at 2 at 14-3. And also the nice thing about this website too is it keeps track of all the tiebreakers, everything. So it makes it way easier to predict because if you're just doing it by hand, it's really hard to keep up with all the tiebreakers. In the AFC, have the Bengals at number 3, 11-6. And in the AFC South, I have the Titans at 10-7 and at number 4. My 3 wildcard teams, I have the Patriots at number 5, 11-6. Have the Broncos at number 6 at 11-6. And then I probably would change my mind here with recent news because so basically here's what I think happened, at least what I was thinking would happen with the Browns. I was thinking, if Watson's out for 6 games, they would start off 4-7, but then win 6 straight, and things in my scenario would line up to where they can sneak in as the last team at 10-7. However, I think this now would change, and probably the Colts now would get that last spot, or the Ravens would get that last spot. And then also too, the Chargers would also be in contention for that last spot.
So comparing your prediction to last season, basically you have the Raiders and the Steelers out, and then you have the Colts and the Broncos in.
But the Broncos and the Browns in.
Oh, Browns. I thought you had the Colts because I thought you were gonna change. But okay, we
Yeah.
have the
I guess now I would have the Colts in.
yeah.
Then in the NFC, I don't know if I truly stand by this. This is just how it worked. Because what I try to do is I'm like, okay, if I start noticing a team starting to win a lot of games, then I start giving them a boost, basically. Like I'm thinking, okay, now they're getting hot. They're going to start winning a lot of games. So the Eagles ended up at 14-3. I don't know if I truly believe that, but that's just how this worked. Number 2, I have the Packers at 13-4. Number 3, I have the Broncos at 12-5. And I have the Rams down here at 11-6 for number 4. Then for my free wild card teams, I have the Cowboys at 13-4, the 49ers at 10-7, and then the Vikings at 9-8. And number 7, the first 2 teams out were the Lions at 8-9 and the Cardinals at 8-9. So that's at least the last. I'll probably do this again closer to the season now with like updated injuries and just getting more of a sense of what these teams are going to be like. Because when I look at this, I feel like I'm undervaluing the Chargers a little bit, but I just don't trust them a lot to finish games. Could be undervaluing the Ravens. Could be undervaluing the Cardinals. Uh, so it's just really hard to. It's really hard to try to pick every single game because you don't know what's going to happen with injuries. You don't know how the season's going to truly play out. In terms of worst teams, I have the Texans down here at 3-14 as the worst team in the AFC, and I have the Falcons over at 2-15. And to me, they would have the number 1 pick next year. They'd probably pick either Bryce Young or CJ Stroud.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think definitely the Falcons and the Houston Texans are definitely the worst teams. And what's what's sad is that at least the Falcons, I think you can see a path. They have the best opportunity. I think they have to go for Bryce Young, a vibrant quarterback. I feel like they'll have to get that choice. But the Texans, I think they're getting to a dark hole. I don't see them leaving. They had a brief success moment in the last decade, in the 2010, 11, 12, and then probably by then it all fell apart. I feel like the Texans kind of from the last half a decade they're being irrelevant.
Yeah, now I'm going to try to share the playoff bracket screen because this is like fascinating. So you go through all of that. It takes a while to go through the entire season, but then at the end you get to actually pick the playoffs, which is quite interesting. So it's gonna load here for a second. Um, okay, we're gonna have to save it again. Yeah, brackets. Right, it's gonna take a second here. And for some reason the 7-2s aren't showing. But like every year up to now, the 2 seed wins both games. I'm curious to see how long it's going to take for a 7 seed to win one of these games because
Yeah,
it really feels like that. Ever since they expanded to 14 teams, the 7 seeds just have outside of the Colts Bills. The Colts had a good chance to win that game in Buffalo back in 2020, but otherwise they haven't been competitive. Like last year, both 7-2 games were terrible.
yeah, yeah. It was yeah. I feel like and if that happens, it will be kind of like a victory for the NFL to be like, hey, it was worth it to have a playoff expansion you know because the 17 can win a second seed. But yeah, last year wasn't competitive. Was no the Chiefs decimated the Steelers, and the Buccaneers kind of was. It seems at first was going to be a really even game, but then by the end, the Buccaneers destroyed the Eagles.
All
But
right, so I have the playoff bracket now. All right, so you don't see the 7-2s. So it would be the Bills over the Browns slash Colts. I think they would beat both teams as the 2 seed. Um, and then it was the Vikings at the Packers, but the Packers would beat the Vikings. All right, so you see these other games. So we have Broncos at the Bengals. I actually have Russell Wilson, Abdul, and Joe Burrow and winning that game. Down here, I have the Patriots at the Titans. The Titans have not won these home playoff games. They have struggled at home in the playoffs. I think they break that trend against the Patriots, and they win to advance to the divisional round.
Bill Bill
Cowboys,
Bill Belichick will love some revenge.
oh, for sure, yeah, for a couple of years ago. I mean, ending the Tom Brady era would be phenomenal. And think about how much the national media would love this matchup: Cowboys at the Rams. They
Wow.
would love that one. But
Oh,
I have
Fox
the
would
Rams.
like Fox would like have massive ratings.
Oh, for sure. But the Rams would win, I think. I don't think the Cowboys playoff streak is breaking this year. Then we have 49ers at the Buccaneers. I think the Buccaneers hold on at home to move to a divisional round.
That would be the kind of Bruno Slonik. Oh, I mean, I feel like the Cowboys somehow are gonna blunder in the playoffs because the way their season ended last year was just sad. It was just pathetic.
Oh, for sure. It's just every single year that they find a way to stuck in the playoffs.
It's
Every
like a tradition. Every January, the Cowboys are gonna you know struggle and disappoint in the playoffs.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, so here is probably this is honestly a repeat of last year. Remember, both the Packers and the Titans lost in the divisional rounds out 1 seeds. I'm thinking the same thing that happened again. I think the Chiefs lose at home to the Broncos in the divisional round, and Broncos go to the AFC title game, and then I have the Rams going to Philadelphia, and the Rams moving on to the NFC title game.
Wow, you have the Eagles at the number one seed. That's bold.
Yeah, and then I have them losing in the divisional round as the number 1 seed. So, so kind of cruel fate for Eagles fans. But I think the Eagles are going to be really good this year. I've heard really good things about Jalen Hurts. I think with AJ Brown, I wish we still had him. I don't know why we traded him, but I just got to accept now he's with another team. Yeah, he's going to be a beast as he always is. I think with Devontae Smith.
And Nick Sirianni feels like the right coach.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it all really just comes to how much better Jalen Hurts can be, and I think he can be a lot better. I really like Philadelphia. I think they have a really good defense. I really like what they're doing up there in Philadelphia. So I have Titans at the Bills, which we are seeing in week 2. So this would be a rematch of a week 2 game. I don't see the Titans going into Buffalo and winning that game against this Bills team. I think they advance. And then for Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady comes to Lambeau. I think it's another failure for the Packers.
Another divisional round failure. Jeez.
Another failure for the Packers.
So January traditions, the Cowboys, making a fool themselves in any playoff match, and then divisional round playoff elimination for the Packers.
Yep. And then if this were to happen, the Chiefs lost, and we have to start talking about the Chiefs being like, okay, are they only going to win one championship with Patrick Mahomes? We would have to start asking ourselves that question. But anyway, AFC title game. Broncos at the Bills. I think this would be a great game. But I think Buffalo, they finally get over the hump and they get back to the Super Bowl the first time since the 90s. And then I think Tom Brady and the Buccaneers get their revenge on Los Angeles. Remember, they stormed back at home against LA last year just for Cooper Kupp to break their hearts. But I think Tampa Bay wins it at home. Then we get to the Super Bowl. Bills, Buccaneers in Arizona in the desert. But unlike the 90s, the Bills finally bring home the Lombardi to Western New York. I've got Buffalo winning the Super Bowl.
Next week, I'll prepare my own. And you know that I'm good at NFL predictions.
Absolutely. You really should. Because it's a lot of fun. like it takes about probably like 30 minutes to do, but like it's a lot of fun, and really, and honestly, it helps you prepare for the season to come out because like you see how the schedule works. Like for the Lions, like I wouldn't be calling for a potential playoff berth if I didn't see how their schedule evolved, and then at least in my prediction, I'm like, okay, they could actually like legitimately be in the playoff hunt here, with the way their schedule break comes out. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they move forward. But one last thing in the NFL I do want to bring up is Zach Wilson. He got hurt in their preseason game against the Panthers for the New York Jets, and which really was a disastrous performance. He threw a pick six, then he gets hurt. At least he's not out for a year, just out for 2 to 4 weeks. There's initial fears he'd be out for much longer, but yeah, it just goes to show you got to be careful in these preseason games. Like the Jets almost ruined their whole season.
But can you explain why he played? Is there a quarterback fight? Do Robert Salah doesn't know who's his starter? Like,
well, he's probably thinking he just wants to get him better and get him into game speed, which it makes sense. But yeah, it's just anytime you throw your players out there, they could get hurt, and it's just it was quite unfortunate. And I'd be more concerned about the pick six he threw because that was a really, really ugly throw from Zach Wilson, and he doesn't look any better than he did last year.
Yeah, I feel like maybe Zach Wilson was distracted with some off the field entertainment and exciting activities that maybe made him kind of not be as good and kind of distracted. I don't know.
2 to 4 weeks to perhaps enjoy the company of some older people in his life that could really enlighten him and teach him some things moving forward.
Yeah. Zach Wilson is a quarterback who really likes to be mentored by older kind of.
Yeah. He's going to take a trip to the zoo and really enjoy the cougar exhibit. He's going to go hiking, and he's going to come across a pack of felines.
Oh, but I'm also surprised when the news came out. Like, he has the face of a guy who would do something like that. Like, I wasn't.
You gotta be honest. He went to BYU. Like, he was like, if you've ever read BYU student code, they're not allowed to do anything out there. So it doesn't shock the moment he gets to New York, he goes crazy.
Yeah, it's like he goes to like the most repressive kind of like tied up environment to a city like New York, where everything happens.
Right. It still annoys me that Tennessee is going to get revenge on that university. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Speaking of college football, yesterday we had the top 25 come out for AP, and my Volunteers were snubbed. They were not in the top 25. They were the first team out. See, I have the AP here. Let me see if I can share it. All right. I have it here. So the AP top 25. So as you can see, no shocker, Alabama, number one. I think this is I think it was right. It was like the 12th straight year that Alabama has been ranked number one at some point in the year. I mean, that is just insane. I mean, just incredible consistency from Nick Saban and staff. Of course, you see you got Ohio State at 2, which honestly I thought there was a chance that they might be 1. But, I guess they still need to prove their defense. You have Georgia at 3, defending national champions.
I think defending national champions should start at number 1, no matter what happens throughout the offseason. If you're the defending national champion, you should be at number 1. You finish number 1. I think it doesn't make
in 2020 have started number 1, but even though they had lost Joe Burrow, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase wasn't going to play. They lost Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I mean, they had lost everything that had made them a national championship team.
Yes, but they're still the defending national champion. They finished they finished the season number one. The rest 2 to 25, you can move it. It doesn't matter. But you finished number one. You were the champion. You should defend your crown. If they lost to Mississippi State, then they will go down. They would, by week 3 they will disappear. But my argument is defending national champions should start at number one, no matter what happens in the offseason.
And plus, you can make the argument too here as well. Alabama did beat Georgia in the SEC title, so I know Georgia did beat them at the end for the national, but they did both split a championship last year. So I think it is fair to maybe say Alabama. If you think Alabama is going to be better this year than Georgia, you could make the argument they could be ranked ahead of Georgia.
No, I think you have a legitimate points. I feel like maybe Alabama has a better chances and better roster than Georgia. But again, if you're the defending national champion, you finish at number one, you should defend your crown and start at number one again. Even if by week 3 you disappear, you don't not even the polls anymore because you start 0-3. Like let's say last 2021 last year, had a 6-6 and horrible season. They didn't have the roster to defend their crown, but at least they should start the season as number one because they were the best team in the previous season. That's my argument. Maybe it doesn't make any sense, but I feel like if you're the number one in the previous season, you should start at number one because you're the defending. Let's say you're the defending national champion, so you're defending your crown. So why can't you start at number one and defend the crown, defend the champion that you wanted?
I mean, that is a very compelling point. But I do think AP voters would counter by saying they're not the ones who choose the playoffs. That's also a thing to think of. This is not the poll that determines who goes to the playoffs.
Yeah, it's fair. Probably if it was like in the 2000s, 2010, where maybe AP polls have more relevance.
Mm-hmm.
That's fair. That's a good point. It's like the AP would be saying, "Hey, that's the college football playoff committee decision, not ours."
Yeah, I mean, before 1998, the AP is who chose the national champion. I mean, this was the most important poll, and I think back then, yeah, I think that would be a much more fair argument for back then. But it even begs the question: why do we still care about this poll? But
it's because
we got. I guess
it's because the college football playoff committee is lazy enough because they want to start at week 7 or 8. They should start at week 1. I mean, why you start ranking teams in the middle of the season? You should start at week 1 because a week 1 game is worth as much as a week 12.
Well, I mean, I think for them, since they are deciding who gets to play for a champion, it makes sense to want to wait a few weeks, get a couple of results, and get a general sense of the teams before releasing a rankings. Because let's say, all right, we have Utah here at number 7. Let's say the committee says they're 7. I don't believe Florida is anywhere on this list. So if Florida beats Utah in week 1, then does the committee all of a sudden the next week have to come out and put Florida at 7?
No, they would make the same evaluation of the AP have. Like when a unranked team beats a top 10 team, they won't go straight to number 10. They will maybe to 22, 21, maybe like a 15 if a unranked team beats the number 1 or number 2. But I feel like I don't know. I'm the argument. I made 2 arguments tonight. Defending national champions should start at number 1 ranked, and the college football playoff committee should start ranking at number 1 at week 1 because that's where the season started. It's like the NFL standings decide who gets to go to the playoffs, right, Nick?
Right.
So I guess we're gonna start the standings at mid season to the NFL too.
But those aren't opinion based though. Those are just they just straight up say how many games you won and how many games you lost. So those are not human influenced. But because think about this, like in college basketball, do we want the basketball committee to start meeting in mid-November when teams have played 2 games and they have 30 something games to go and start ranking because like the AP poll there really is meaningless up until the very end.
I guess for basketball is a fair point because, but but at college football, even the final ranks is way more important than college basketball. You know that you're gonna go to Martin Madness if you're ranked, no matter what happens. Like only if you truly makes a terrible at the end run. I don't know, but if you're ranked, you gotta go in. But in college football, only if you're 1 to 4, you're gonna go in. So that's a big difference. You know, you can start meeting in mid-November. It at the end it doesn't matter because the way the format for March Madness is, maybe the only people that will truly care at this mid-November meetings will be the 4 teams in, the last 4 in and the first 4 out. But in college football, it's worth way more because you're deciding only 4 teams to go in to fight for the national champions. But
And here's also my concern too about the playoff committee. I feel like because here's the thing, they devalue G5 teams. Well, the AP poll tends to rank. Well, they will rank them higher. They will rank them before the playoff committee does. And I feel like if we had the playoff committee from the start, then G5 teams just would never have a chance. Period. They need, I think, a little bit at the beginning of that season to have the AP voters who are scattered all across the country be like, hey, this G5 team is really, really good. You should pay attention to them. Because otherwise, you get situations where Coastal Carolina is 12 in the AP and not ranked in the playoff poll, like we had a couple of years ago. So I think that's the value truly of the AP, not even necessarily for the big teams, but it's for the smaller teams that the playoff committee just straight up ignores.
I really truly hope that because of the Cincinnati effect, I'll call the Cincinnati effect, like they made it to the college football playoff. They didn't do a bad job. You know they lost to Alabama, but so did Notre Dame, so did Oklahoma in the semis finals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so and really they played just as well as any other team, and they played well against their passing game as well. They held Bryce Young to 181 yards passing. So it's Cincinnati was a really good team, a team deserving of their playoff spot. And I don't know if there's going to be any G5 teams this year that are going to make it back to the playoffs, but there's going to be eventually, at least a team worthy of that.
So
Go ahead.
So you mentioned about a G5 team making. Probably the first G5 team ranked is
Yeah, Cincinnati and Houston are the top two. BYU is borderline. So the bottom three right here are your first three contenders, I would say.
yeah. Probably I guess Cincinnati has the best shot. Probably they don't have the same roster as last season,
I think
but
Houston is going to be the better team this year. I really think when you take a look at Houston, honestly, a team to watch down here in the other receivings, this team right here, Fresno State, and they have a week-free game at USC. If they can somehow upset USC, watch out. Fresno could make a run at it.
do you think the AP poll voters were giving already too much credit for Lincoln Riley and already ranked because of the Lincoln Riley effect? Because if you go back to USC, they not even ranked. Probably they were the only team that were no. Let's see.
Miami was not ranked. Wisconsin wasn't ranked either. Let's see. Were there any other teams? Texas A&M wasn't ranked, and they're all the way up at number 6.
Yeah, I guess Texas A&M because of the number one being the number one recruiting. USC because of the Lincoln Riley effect. Miami because of Mario Cristobal.
Yeah, and then Wisconsin makes no sense. I think Wisconsin, I don't see what they've done this year that warrants them being above Arkansas. I think all three of these teams down here, Arkansas, Kentucky, Ole Miss, would beat Wisconsin. I do not understand Wisconsin at number 18 at all.
Yeah, it's yeah. I agree. I feel like probably they just won Big Ten West team to be ranked, maybe
Let me see how many Big Ten West teams are even ranked here. So
just
Ohio
one.
State,
Just
that's
one.
the East. Michigan, that's the East. Michigan
There's only
State East. Yeah, Wisconsin. Yeah, that's the only one.
the only one Big Ten West team to be
Iowa
ranked.
will be better than Wisconsin. Like, and Iowa made the Big Ten title game last year. So how? Because Purdue's a West team. I think Purdue will be better than Wisconsin.
Yeah, Purdue won their bowl game with all
And
the.
but with asterisks, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, that's what I was
I
provoking you,
don't
Nick.
recognize the results of that game.
Yeah, the Nicholas Hill committee does not recognize the winner of the Music City Bowl.
Yes. Yeah, as far as I am concerned, Tennessee won that game 54-51. The ball crossed the plane before the knee touched the ground. And by the rule book, that's a touchdown. So Tennessee, so I count that 6 extra points for the balls. 54-51 is your final. Tennessee won the Music City Bowl. At least in my opinion.
But speaking of, yeah, yeah, that game was a very. But speaking of Tennessee, do you think? I think they should be number 25. I think they should be ranked 25.
Yeah, I would say I think they have a better roster than BYU easily. Right now, poor Wake Forest. They were a top 25 team, but now that Sam Hartman's out for an indefinite amount of time, I don't think they are anymore. Ole Miss is a borderline team. They still have a lot of talent, and with Lane Kiffin, they're going to score points, but I don't think they're going to be the same. I think Tennessee's better than Wisconsin. I think Tennessee's better than Pittsburgh. Of course, we're gonna find out in week 2. I think Tennessee is at least comparable to Miami. The rest of these teams I deserve to be over Tennessee. I would say I think Oregon.
So let's say, Nick, do you think so? Let's say Pittsburgh wins West Virginia, and Tennessee wins Ball State, which that should be up. Do you think Tennessee can make it to the ranks if they would have win that game?
It depends how. Like if they throw up 70 points on Ball State, yes. Because remember, this is going to be a Thursday night game. Actually, both Pittsburgh and Tennessee will both play on that opening Thursday. Tennessee, so there's not going to be a lot of games, so people will be watching Tennessee. They got to throw up like 60, 70 points and hope that some of these teams are over here lose. Like Wake Forest, Kentucky, Arkansas. Actually remember Cincinnati plays at Arkansas week 1. So one of these two teams will lose in front of them. So especially like if Arkansas were to blow out Cincinnati, then Cincinnati will fall out. But then you got to remember too, Texas is that second team, and if they win, they play Alabama week 2. Voters might be more inclined to put Texas up in the top 25 to make that a top match.
Yeah, to be like a more compelling game. 2 ranked teams, that will definitely sell.
Yeah. Also, I'll say this: I think Penn State also is undervalued here. I think they'll get up because remember Penn State plays Auburn. I think Penn State will beat Auburn in week 3. But yeah, honestly though, in a way, I'm glad that Tennessee isn't ranked here. I think that gives them more motivation. They have to go out and they have to earn respect. They don't have respect, and really, they don't deserve to have respect. Tennessee has not done anything for 15 years. They haven't had a 10-win season since 2007. They haven't made the SEC title game since 2007. Their defense gave up 45% of third down conversions last year. You got to go out and prove that you're better. I mean, yes, we know the offense is going to be spectacular, but the defense is what's going to determine how far this team can go this year. Because the defense still isn't that good, then our ceiling is at 8 wins. And that's a borderline top 25 team, as this poll suggests. So I think it's a fair ranking for now. I mean, I would love to see a number next to their name to start off the year, but it isn't going to matter after week 1 because if they are truly a top 25 team or better, then the season will show that. So they got to go out there and they got to prove it. And Josh Heupel is telling that to his team. I listened to his press conference the other day, and he was like, "This is a team of guys that really, really want it. They really want to go out there, and they really want to, prove themselves." on the field, and I feel like they left a lot. They had the Music City Bowl at the end where the win got stolen from them. They had the Ole Miss game where they blew some big chances to win that game. The Pittsburgh game early on, they had chances to win. Alabama, they were only down on a touchdown heading into the fourth quarter, and they let that game get away from them. They could have been in that game at the end. So this team has a lot to prove, and I think Josh Heupel is the right guy. I'm really hoping to tap into that and get this team over the edge and finish some of those games they were not able to finish last year.
No, yeah, I feel like there's a lot of factors that Josh Heupel can use to motivate, hype up his team, to show that, hey, we're not appreciated enough. Hey, last year we had a lot to prove. So I can see that he was a factor. But again, they already going to have a top 25 team matchup in week 2. So that's already a way to show that on the field, all that motivation they can use.
All right. Yeah. So definitely much more college football here coming up in the coming weeks. We were going to talk about ACC. I guess talk about it briefly. I mean, I think Clemson's going to reassume their dominance in the ACC this year, assuming they can figure out their quarterback situation. Is it going to be DJ Ujalele? Is it going to be there's like the backup guy they're looking at as well? I feel like Ujalele is on a thin leash this year after not playing well last year. But still, I think the talent on the rest of the team is going to be too good. I think Clemson's going to have one of the best defenses, if not the best defense in the entire country. And really, when you look at the rest of the ACC, who's going to really challenge them? NC State has probably the best roster. I think they also have one of the best defenses in the entire country, but is their offense going to be enough? Wake Forest, I thought was going to be one of those contenders until Sam Hartman went down. Florida State is nowhere close to being ready. Miami, to me, I don't think in year one of Mario Cristobal, we already know from his time at Oregon, great recruiter, not a great in-game coach. And really the rest of ACC just irrelevant. I mean, I think Boston College is a sneaky good team. They could pull an upset or two somewhere. Virginia Tech will be interesting in a first-year head coach. North Carolina could be a lot better this year. They have the talent to be really good, but with Sam Howell, they couldn't do anything last year. And the question is Mac Brown past his prime?
So the question is, last year Clemson finished at third in their conference, probably their worst results in 8 years or even beyond. So how much do you think Dabo Swinney needs to show this season as a turnaround to prove he's a legitimate top tier head coach? Of course, he won national champions. He's a winning proven coach. But do you think to kind of remain at Clemson, even because I guess he's a top candidate for replacing Nick Saban when he retires? But how much do you think he needs to prove himself this season?
I don't think he needs to prove so. He has 2 national titles. That's proof enough that you belong. I mean, both of them were over Alabama. You've beaten Nick Saban twice with 2 different quarterbacks. I mean, I think the thing moving forward is, can Clemson adapt to the new world of college football? Can they adapt to the NIL? Can they adapt to the transfer portal? Dabo Swinney has said he's not really big into the transfer portal. He would rather have guys that he gets out of high school. But I think if Clemson's going to truly remain competitive, they got to use that more. They got to be more bold, more aggressive. Like Alabama, look at Nick Saban. The reason why he stays on top is, he complains about, I don't like the spread offense. But you know what he did? He went out and got Lane Kiffin, revolutionized his offense. Alabama has stayed on top. He's like, initially when the transfer portal came out, I hate the transfer portal. Think it's a bad idea. But he goes out, uses the transfer portal. NIL. We hate NIL. I think it's a bad idea. But, he's going out, he's talking to boosters, and he's like, hey, we need more money for NIL. Nick Saban always adapts. My concern with Dabo Swinney is he doesn't adapt.
For me, the most impressive thing that Nick Saban adapt is developing star quarterbacks. For like, 4 straight really good quarterbacks from Jalen Hurts to Tua to Mac Jones and now Bryce Young. Because if you think about it, before Jalen Hurts, there were no standing quarterbacks. Who remembers Jake Cocker? He led Alabama to the 2016 national championship when they
Mhm.
defeated Clemson, but nobody remembers that. Maybe AJ McCarron is the most memorable quarterback
I
of.
think Greg McElroy is the person I think of, not just because he's a commentator. I mean, John Parker Wilson, because I mean it's kind of a funny name, and he calls games for Alabama on their radio network. But yeah, I mean those quarterbacks back in the early days of Saban just weren't nowhere near the talent level of a Tua Tagovailoa, Jalen Hurts, a Mac Jones. Now you got Bryce Young. There's nowhere close.
Yeah.
So it's just amazing and really the foresight of of Nick Saban, and really I think it's just a lesson in life. You can be the best at your craft, but you always have to be adapting, and you always have to bring in people who are better at certain aspects of your job than you. Like Nick Saban's like, all right, I'm the best head coach ever, but I'm not good at developing quarterbacks. So he brought in Lane Kiffin, and that has worked wonders for him.
Yeah, and to finish the ACC kind of preview, of course, I think Clemson is going to win the Atlantic Division. I think they're going to probably, by like the, last or before last week of college regular season, they're going to clinch. And the Coastal, I don't know. I can see Miami Hurricanes making a run. Of course, I think they're going to be a blowout in the ACC championship, but I think they can be a viable team to win the ACC Coastal Division. And I think for year one of Mario Cristobal, there's already an accomplishment.
Oh, for sure. I think it'll be Miami or North Carolina. I think it'll be one of those two teams. I don't see Pitt winning this division. I don't see either one of the Virginia divisions. And then Duke and Georgia Tech will be a race between who's going to be the worst team in the conference. And I'll say this, Jeff Collins, he's going to get fired after this year. Georgia Tech, I was looking at their schedule. They might go 2-10. They start off the year with Clemson. They end the season with Georgia. And Jeff Collins' whole, we are the city of Atlanta's football team. It just has been a complete failure. They should have never gotten rid of Paul Johnson and left the triple option. Because here's the thing: Georgia Tech cannot recruit on the same level that Georgia can, that these SEC teams can. Remember, Georgia Tech was a founding member of the SEC all the way back in the 30s, and they left because of their academic requirements. They could not compete with SEC football teams. And now, they are in a really bad spot. They don't have the allure of the U or USC or some of these other teams that are in big cities. Georgia Tech, they're in the shadow of Georgia. That rivalry hasn't been competitive since 2016. I really think that Georgia Tech should really think about going back to an option offense, because at least with an option offense, you can be competitive. And I really think Vanderbilt, they should do the same thing. As annoying as that would be to Tennessee, to have Vanderbilt do something like a triple option, you can't win with your level of recruiting doing a traditional offense. You're barely producing NFL talent as it is. I know you produce some NFL talent every now and then, but you're not producing a lot of it. So for Georgia Tech, I know you were annoyed with Paul Johnson from time to time, but he gave you some of the best years you've ever had in modern college football.
Yeah, and I remember, Georgia Tech was an interesting team. I remember when they had that Tennessee opener game back in 2017, how great that game was and how competitive that was. So probably the downfall. I think it's hard to recruit because they don't feel like a Southern football school. I've
Oh,
been to their campus. I've been to their campus multiple times when I was covering Atlanta United when in their start their regular season 2017 playing at Bobby Dodd
yeah,
Stadium.
their stadium was better for Atlanta United than it is for Georgia Tech.
Oh yeah, for sure. I feel like Atlanta United fans really fit in and make that stadium vibrant than Georgia Tech.
Oh, for sure, sure. It's just it's a bad deal for Georgia Tech. Duke, of course, they're in the first year of a new coaching staff. Um,
And I remember
we'll see.
I remember when Georgia Tech played Tennessee in Atlanta, it was a 50-50, even I'll say even 60-40 Tennessee.
It was 70-30. I mean, I was there. It's the first game I actually ever marched in was Georgia Tech, Tennessee, and yeah, it was definitely mostly Vols fans, and that still is probably one of the dumbest college football games I've ever watched. Like, how do you give up 535 yards rushing and still win? Because that's what Tennessee did that day, and we really should not have won that football game, but somehow we did. Because we stopped a 2-point conversion at the end in overtime to win 42-41, and
I mean, Georgia Tech even had a field goal chance to win the game in the regulars in the
regulation. Yeah,
regular.
I remember that now. I've honestly blocked out most of that season, but I remember bits and pieces of that game because after that, the rest of the season just was horrible. Yeah, just a horrible, horrible season. But
I mean, do you remember Tennessee UMass? How
oh my god, it was so hot that day.
how bad of a football game that was. If you want to show, let's say, to my Brazilian, sports fans, that game, they'll be like, "That's a horrible sport. I won't watch football ever again."
Yeah, I remember like that was my mom and brother's first time in Neyland Stadium, and they haven't been back since. So like they picked a horrible, horrible game to go to. It was hot. It was not. It was a terrible game. It was a boring game. At least we won that game. It was better than Georgia State, at least, which was a horrible game and a game that we lost. But look at the rest of ACC too. Another team to watch, Louisville. Obviously our friend Jason's works, his Louisville Cardinals. I was talking to him. He told me he was thinking like 6-6, 7-5 for them. And I looked at their schedule. They actually start off, I think, relatively light, but their last month of the schedule is brutal. Because they have to play.
They have to play three current ranked teams: Clemson, NC State, and Kentucky.
Yeah. So if I share this just real quick.
But they start with, let's say, three winnable games: Syracuse and UCF on the road, and Florida State at home.
Yeah. So right now, if I were to pick this, and I have the schedule up, so I think they win at Syracuse, and Syracuse also has a team to watch for because Dino Babers, after winning 10 games 2018, they've fallen off up there, and there's a chance that he might get fired at the end of the year. So huge game for both coaches here because Scott Satterfield has somewhat underperformed at Louisville. I would say the expectations I had for him going there are a lot higher than what we've seen. They have not reached the Petrino days at all with Satterfield. I think they win there. With UCF, I actually think they lose that game. I think going to the bounce house on a Friday night is not a great recipe. I think those two teams are pretty comparable in talent, and UCF wins that game. But the next week, their first home game is a Friday night at home against Florida State. I think they win that game. Also, too, having two straight Friday night games, that has to be so annoying. Yeah, so annoying. Like, not getting because college football is meant to be on Saturdays, not Fridays. But anyway.
Yeah, like Friday nights are as we discussed when we started the show for high school football. It's
exactly.
like it's really weird. Like I know for TV they really want to expand their games beyond their tradition. Like of course for ESPN they want to put games on Thursday night, on Friday night, even probably a week one they put games on Sunday night and even Monday night because they want to expand their live TV and live sports because they make their revenue. But it's so still like Friday nights are for high school football, Saturdays are for college football, and NFL Sunday.
Yep. And that'll be a good crowd for Florida State, obviously. But I think they beat the Seminoles at home. South Florida, week 4. I think they win that game. Then the next 2 weeks, I think they lose to Boston College, so that puts them at 3-2. I think Boston College just has a sneaky good team. That's on the road. But I think they beat Virginia. So that's 4-2. Pittsburgh, I think they win that game, 5-2. I don't think Pittsburgh's going to be really good. Now, with the new information that I have about Wake Forest, I I'm gonna change that because when we were talked a few weeks ago, I had this game as a loss. Now I'm gonna say it's a win. I think they win that game 7-2. James Madison. I will say this: I have picked this as a loss because James Madison is one of the top 5 FCS programs, and this is a hard game for Louisville. But now that I'm thinking they win the Wake Forest, that they have 2 straight wins, but this game is before Clemson. I'm going to give them the win here. So I believe that's, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 7. So I have them at 7-2 at this point, but I think they lose at Clemson. I think they lose to NC State, and they lose at Kentucky. So I think that has them at 7-5. But 5 out of the last 6 games are against ranked teams. But I do have them winning against Pittsburgh and Wake Forest.
Yeah, I can see them 7-5, 6-6. Of course, they hasn't.
I think if they get 7 8 wins, I think that would be a huge success for them this year.
I mean, they haven't been the same since Lamar Jackson left. I think that was their closest shot to getting to the playoffs. I think that their loss to Clemson. That was probably their biggest game ever. I remember how big that game felt.
Well, in terms of their biggest games, I know they had a couple of big games in like 2006-ish when they had Brian Brom at quarterback. Like when they played West Virginia back then. If they had won some of those games, they could have been in national title contention. 2013 when they had Teddy Bridgewater, when they lost to UCF at home, that was a loss that really hurt them. I think they still made the Sugar Bowl that year, if I'm not mistaken. But that loss really still, I think, hurt them in the long run. And then obviously that Clemson loss really killed them as well. So, yeah, so they've had some chances, but they just haven't been able to get over the precipice. But I think this year you got to navigate that tough second half, and you really got to get off to a really quick start. Really, if you can somehow win those UCF and Boston College games, you could have a really, really great season. But I'm not convinced. But yeah, but that's just a look at the ACC. I'm picking Clemson. I'm guessing you are too.
Yeah, I'm picking Clemson, Miami.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on to a little bit of baseball. First and foremost, the Braves won again tonight, 5-0 over the Mets. So they will at least split this series, and the division's down to 3.5 games. Contrary, though, the next 2 nights they do have to face Scherzer and DeGrom. So, we'll see. I'm hoping they can get at least one of those games.
I mean, both of them are very close to making the playoffs. The Mets are 99.9999, and the Braves are 99.6. So probably both of them are going to make the playoffs, but definitely there's a that's the best division fight, because if you think about it, like the closest one right now is the Central fight, but that is not as compelling as the National League East.
Oh no, because really whoever wins this game, that will have a huge advantage going into next year. Going into these postseason, because you'll have that second seed, and it's huge. And really, too, you get to skip that opening weekend as well. You get to skip the wild card round and go straight to the divisional round. You don't have to host a 3-game series. That really is what is the huge fight here for, and that is super important. That's one less game you have to throw your arms out for in the postseason.
If I was in Knoxville, I would make the trip. It's only $7 to watch this game. Man, oh man, I would die. I would die too.
Nights I would do it. If I weren't working, I'd definitely go do it.
I mean, I miss so much watching the Mets and the Braves at now Truist Park and SunTrust Park. That environment is so amazing, but. It's a great fight. I think the Mets at the end, I think they're deeper roster. I think Stephen Cohen's investment finally paying off. I think they win the division, not by much, probably by 2 games or even 1 game, but I think they'll win the division.
Oh yeah, I agree. It's just their top line stars are too good. I mean, DeGrom and Scherzer. I think they'll get them over the top. But the Braves are going to do it. They're going to have to overcome those top stars. But we still have a couple of weeks to go. Even whatever happens the next 2 nights, at the very minimum, I think the Braves have done at minimum what they needed to do this week. But it's a lot. But there's still a long way to go. And last thing on the American side of things, Fernando Tatis Jr. gets busted for having steroids in the system. He's out for 80 games. Man, what do you think this does for him moving forward? Because he was one of the young, exciting players, and now his reputation's kind of tainted.
I think about it first. What these implications are for the San Diego Padres 2022 season, because they are in the hunt for making the wild card. I think they have to make the wild card, especially after all their acquisitions in the trade deadline with Soto and Bell. They if they don't make to the playoffs, it's a bust. It's a probably the most disappointing season of all baseball because of all the expectations of all the trade acquisition of the stars. But definitely not having Fernando Tatis hurts your offense, and I feel like probably got a step back. I still think the Padres makes the wild card, makes the playoffs, even though they lost 6 out of their last 10 games. But definitely not having Fernando Tatis definitely decreases their chances of getting to the playoffs. Even if currently they have an 80% chance of getting to the playoffs.
Right, and they're going to have to be in that 3-game series where you needed a Tatis. If right now they're playing the Braves, you need all the bombs that you need. Because you have Juan Soto, but you need a Tatis too to go up against Acuna and Riley and Olsen and all the other guys that are just hitting the ball of the park right now for the Braves. So it's a huge loss. I think it takes them out of title contention this season for sure.
Yeah, I think with all you mentioned, all that recent struggles that they've been having. They lost 6 out of the last 10 games. Fernando Tatis being ruled out because of BED definitely gives a step back and probably decreases a lot of their chance. I still think they can make it, but if they don't, how disappointing the San Diego Padres fans and how this organization feel, because again, expectation after expectation. Look how many talents they acquire over the last few years. Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis, now Juan Soto, Bell. It's a loaded roster, but they never seem to click. And now Tatis get PD issues, which makes even harder.
Yeah, it is really. I mean, you just almost have to feel like you're cursed if you're a Padres fan. I mean, even as this is the best you've been in a long time, you're still not. You're still looking way, way up at the Dodgers, who are just way ahead of you and are way better than you.
And if you think about it, Nick, not only for Padres but for San Diego sports fans as a whole, because their last decade have been disappointments because their NFL team left, their Major League Baseball team, despite all that talent, can't make to the playoffs, and they don't have an NBA team. So I guess they all they have.
San Diego State is the other thing they have, and they're having to play in Carson, California right now because their stadium's getting rebuilt.
And also they got disappointed in basketball too, because when they had the really, really good season in basketball in 2020, there was no March Madness to play. So San Diego sports fans cannot catch a break of all many disappointments they got on and off the field.
Like San Diego State and Dayton both in 2020 got so screwed because that was their one chance to make national title runs. They never got the shot.
Yeah. So if you think about it, San Diego is probably the cursed sports city, probably in this century.
Oh yeah, absolutely, easily. So it's just really a shame for them, but we'll see if they can still overcome this suspension. All right, quickly, what's going on down in Brazil? Of course, I know we have
Brazilian Cup Brazilian Cup over this week, but I'm gonna start with Brazilian Championship. I mean, Palmeiras they are just the dominant team. I think Abel Ferreira really wants to win because that's the last remaining trophy, major trophy he didn't got here in Palmeiras. He's 2 times Libertadores South American champions.
Libertadores, that's what I was looking for. Like the word I was looking for. Yeah.
What?
That was the word I was looking for a moment ago, was Libertadores.
Oh yeah. Look, Libertadores is in 2 weeks away still. Now this week is Brazilian Cup, but but back to my point, I think Abel Ferreira is managing way better his not only his starters, his roster, because last year he had probably the same 80%, 85% of the same roster he had last year, and had a really disappointing Brazilian championship. But now they're 9 points ahead. They won 5 straight. Their next opponent is Flamengo, and if they win Flamengo, they might have a 12-point lead with only 15 games left. So if they win the game on Sunday, which Palmeiras versus Flamengo, then Palmeiras like 95% chance to win the title. Again, there's still a long way to go. There's only the starter of the the second turn, but I feel like still Palmeiras is the heavily favored. But this Sunday game, it's sad, is in between Brazilian Cup and Libertadores. It's gotta get on the shadows, but Palmeiras and Flamengo, first place versus second place in Brazilian Championship. I mean, Flamengo is on a really rise. They won 5-0. Both teams had reserves, of course, but Flamengo is on a rise. I mean, this roster is so weird. Flamengo's roster is like, or they are on the high of the high, or on the low of the low. There's no middle ground. Or they're playing their best, or they're playing their worst. And what?
I was saying, yeah.
So I think this game's gonna be a tie. I think Palmeiras still stay like 9 points ahead, maybe like 8 if Corinthians win. Which for me, Corinthians is a disappointing season. I think they can pass tomorrow. They are 2-0 down. They lost their first game, their first leg game versus Atlético Goianiense in the Brazilian Cup. I think they can advance. I think it's going to be on penalties. But the pressure is all. I mean, Corinthians fans are really mad on their front office. They're mad, especially with their coach, who had a terrible press conference after the loss versus Palmeiras at home. Reporter asked him, "Are you scared of losing your job at Corinthians?" He said, "Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?" And he said, "In the state of my life right now, I'm not. I don't have fear losing my job. Do you want to see my bank account? I don't need this job. I can take any job I want. I'm here because." So basically, he said, "Hey, I'm rich. I don't need this." And the fans got really, really, really mad at him. The next day, of course, he apologized. He said that he doesn't care about the money. He loves being a Corinthians. That's what he meant. But it came out weird. He said in a very pretentious, very snarky way. He said like, "Hey," the way he said, "Hey, look at my bank account," kind of sentence. It's just pretentious. So Vitor Pereira had a really awful game on Saturday. Of course, he lost 3 games this season to Palmeiras. He got swept by Palmeiras this season. Lost in the Paulista. What?
I say the one time I can remember something like that happening in American sports. Jim Calhoun used to be the coach at UConn. He had a press conference one time where someone was like grilling him on, how does it feel to be the highest paid employee in the University of Connecticut basketball system? And all these other jobs are being cut and everything else. And he just went off on this report, which just like, get some facts and come back and see me.
Ooh.
Oh, I had it playing.
Considering that you're the highest paid state employee and there's a $2 billion budget deficit,
Yep.
do you think that
Not a dime back.
not a dime back?
Not a dime back. I'd like to be retired someday. I'm getting tired.
1.6 million is enough?
I'm sorry?
1.5 million?
I make a lot more than that.
You do?
Yeah.
What's your...
What's it take tonight?
Ooh. What a time back.
You're not really that stupid, are you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've got.
My best advice to you: shut up.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
That's very polite.
No, it wasn't polite. I like you to shut up. This is like, if you want to talk to me outside, I'm more than happy to talk to you. We're talking about
If you
basketball.
guys covered this stuff, I wouldn't have to do it.
Will you please? Quite frankly, we bring in $12 million to the university. Nothing to do with state funds. We make $12 million a year for this university. Get some facts and come back and see me. Get some facts and come back and see me. Don't throw out salaries or other things. Get some facts and come back and see me. We turn over $12 million to the University of Connecticut, which is state-run. Next question.
That was kind of the vibe. That Vitor Pereira had on Saturday. The way he just said it was just awful. I feel like he is very, the way he communicates. I know he want to be authentic and he want to be kind of like this, guy that is very like strong, but he probably sometimes kind of goes as snarky, and that's how he came out on Saturday.
Even if you're doing it for the money, you should never admit you're doing it for the money. Because everyone knows you're doing it for the money, but you got to come up with some other reason. Life is all about acting. It's all about making it. It's all about getting yourself into the positions where you need to make money.
Yeah, I know it's gonna be Portuguese, and I'll translate later. But I think the way you can read his face and expression, I think you can tell. Hold on.
Nesse momento, de perder o emprego, de deixar o Corinthians. Boa noite.
Você deve estar a brincar comigo, cara.
Are you kidding me?
Você deve estar a brincar comigo com essa
Are you
pergunta.
kidding me? Are you kidding me
Deve
with that
estar a brincar
question?
comigo.
Are you kidding
Eu,
me?
nesta fase da minha vida, da minha carreira, ter medo de perder o emprego.
In this
Sabe quanto dinheiro é que eu tenho
in this point of my career, do you think I'm scared of losing my job?
no banco, meu amigo?
Do you know how much money I have in the bank?
Sabe, eu tenho uma vida estabilizada.
I have my life figured out. I have my life stabilized.
Eu não preciso.
I don't need this.
Estou aqui no Corinthians, se não for no Corinthians, é no outro clube qualquer.
I'm here at Corinthians, but I keep in another club
Portanto, e quando eu quiser,
when I want.
percebe? Por isso para mim, passa ao lado.
This, for me, the question you asked about fear of losing his job,
Passa ao lado.
pass it.
Oh man, he is fed up. That's the sign of a coach that isn't going to be at his job for much longer.
Yeah, because I feel like he's probably not. He's fed up because the Corinthians front office only supply him with old players that are not, ready for the season for the how long, and he had to really make sacrifices and kind of like try to stretch the roster. But William left, the former Arsenal and Chelsea player left. He's probably going back to England again. He left mid-season, saying that he left because he was being threatened by the fans. His family was being threatened. My theory, I think his just wife's like, hey, I want to go back to England. I'm tired of being here. Probably his wife pressured him. That was my hypothesis. That wasn't confirmed. Just saying. But Corinthians right now is just a mess. Eliminated from Libertadores, 9 points behind Palmeiras, losing to Palmeiras again, being swept by a rival, 3 games, 3 losses, and you have to win 2-0 to go to penalties to advance to the only viable competition, only viable chance to win a tournament this season. So Corinthians' season is all on the balance on Wednesday. All the organized fan base, Gaviões da Fiel and the Camisa 12, issuing a statement says that if they don't win on Wednesday, they're just proof they're lazy, spoiled athletes that don't belong in Corinthians, and they're gonna make a hell out of them. That's what their statement says.
Jeez, I mean, honestly, Loki, like it sounds like a college football message board almost, but just it's like no action. Like it's basically Vol Nation if Tennessee loses to Florida again.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. It's like imagine losing to in football season losing to Florida 3 times, and one of those times where you eliminated your chances of making to the slim chances of making the college football playoff, and now you have the chance to, let's say, win the East, to at least have a chance to win one thing.
Yeah.
That's how this game at Corinthians stands on Wednesdays. Like, I think they can win. I think they're playing at home. They're always strong in the playoffs at home. I know they lost to Flamengo. That was their only loss in the playoffs at home, in the last few years. But I don't see this roster much forward. I think Corinthians have the best chance of winning a tournament Brazilian Cup, but I don't know. I think probably in the semis they might get eliminated if they advance. But it's just a disappointment because Corinthians season looked promising because all the talent they had, on paper. William, Paulinho, Renato Augusto, Juliano, Yuri Alberto, Roger Guedes, all seem really good players, all quality players, but they never clicked. Yuri Alberto makes his debut a month ago, but he can't shot on goal. I think his first shot on goal this season after like 6 games was last game. So what it's like getting a quarterback with all the expectation, and his first correct throw was after like 4 or 5 games. Not goal, like not making a goal, but shotting on goals. Like not say a quarterback threw a touchdown, but threw a correct pass. So Corinthians on scrambles right now. I think if they get eliminated on Wednesday, I probably would take a lot of guts for Corinthians front office to keep Vitor Pereira if they get eliminated on Wednesday. It would take a lot of guts. Or even I wouldn't be surprised even Vitor Pereira just call it quits and just say, "Hey, I resign." Because as you said, that's a really mad coach. You saw in the press conference. So and he said his statement. You heard he has money in his bank account. He doesn't need this. He probably think about making a career back to Europe, but of course, he only things that will keep him is seen as like this high-profile Portuguese coach leaving as a failure after Abel Ferreira, and Jorge Jesus making really good performances in Flamengo and Palmeiras and Flamengo. That's the only thing I think will keep him because Corinthians front office did not give him a good roster for him to work, and the roster that he had, he never made it fit, never made it click.
Yeah, it's a tough decision. Honestly, if you're having fans like, basically threatening you if you don't win the game, it just sounds toxic. Like, why would you even work in this environment? It just sounds like an environment where you can't succeed.
Yeah, I think Corinthians fans are exaggerated. Of course, when you lose to Palmeiras, when you get swept in the season for Palmeiras, that stinks. Like that's the game, Corinthians fans do not tolerate losing. That's the one thing Corinthians fans are mad about Vitor Pereira. Corinthians fans thinks that Vitor Pereira does not understand the pressure of a Corinthians versus Palmeiras game. That's what I think they hold a grudge on. And that's why they were so mad after losing again to Palmeiras. Now at home, the other 2 games were at Palmeiras, home field. So at least that was the excuse. Now Corinthians lost at home to Palmeiras, getting swept. So that was kind of all. I think all this breakdown was mainly because of this, and of course being eliminated of Libertadores after not giving a threat to Flamengo, and I feel like a lot of hangs in the balance for Corinthians on Wednesday. I think they can. I think they're gonna advance on penalties. I think that's if they win 2-0 and on penalty it's gonna be like 5-4. That's my prediction.
I agree with that. It sounds like it's going to be a very, very entertaining game, a very tense game.
I'll be broadcasting that game tomorrow in a radio station here, a local radio station here. So I'm excited about that. The other games of the Brazilian Cup is Flamengo Atlético Paranaense. First game was a 0-0. I, I mean, Atlético Paranaense has been the rock on Flamengo's shoes. They never like last 2 seasons they got eliminated by 2 out of the last three Brazilian Cups, they were eliminated by Atlético Paranaense. So Atlético Paranaense always finds a way to eliminate Flamengo. I think this time, I think they can make it. I think it's going to be like 1-0 at, Atlético Paranaense's home field. I think Felipao does it again. I mean, Felipao is just a master on playoff games. He's just one of the best. I think he does it again. Go ahead. Sorry.
I'd say I would agree with that. It just sounds like they're just on an absolute roll right now, and they're gonna keep it going.
Yeah, I mean they just qualified to the Libertadores semifinal in the most shocking and electric way. You know, winning 1-0 in the last minute on the road in Argentina versus Estudiantes. So I think they lost 5-0 last weekend. They were playing the reserves. They were playing totally the reserves. They weren't focused. Of course, they after you come on such an emotional win, an emotional game with so much on so much on stakes. When you play a game with the reserves that is on still on mid-season in the Brazilian championship, of course maybe you relax, maybe you kind of slept and not performing well. But I think this time is different. I think it needs to win. Sao Paulo America Mineiro. São Paulo played really well on Sunday. I broadcast that game, but I still see São Paulo with a lot of issues on transition. I feel like their attack is not as good probably as it should be. I think especially creating options, their midfield, but they're 1-0 up. I think they can. I think the game is going to be tied at São Paulo's advance. And last, Fluminense Fortaleza. I think Fluminense wins again. Fortaleza is just in the bottom. They're not as good as they were last season. So my semifinalists would be Flamengo, Corinthians, Fluminense, and São Paulo. It would be a hell of a semifinals. The really big teams on the semifinals. But but the game for me, the entertaining game is going to be Corinthians Atlético Goianiense because all can happen. It will be a heroic Corinthians win or a very big loss, and a lot of things happen post game.
Oh, what happened post game?
What?
What happened to post game?
No,
oh yeah. What we just discussed. Yeah.
Yeah, if they were eliminated, their aftermath, after the game is going to be not. I think the fans are not going to take well if Corinthians were eliminated. And to make matters worse, Atlético Goianiense has not lost in the last 5 games in Corinthians Stadium. Actually, I think they not even suffer a goal in the last 5 games playing at Corinthians Stadium. So they have a really good, have a really good track playing at Corinthians Stadium.
Yeah, and they can lose this game by a goal and still make it through. So
yeah, and Corinthians has not been able to score. I mean, in Brazil, they only scored 26 goals, which makes them the worst attack from the top 7 teams by far. The other, the top 4 teams, Palmeiras scored 37, Flamengo scored 37, Fluminense scored 32, Corinthians scored 26. So from the top 4, Corinthians has the worst attack. They have, and the only third best defense. So I don't know, but it's going to be a very entertaining week, especially with Brazilian Cup playoffs.
Absolutely, it sounds like it's going to be. I'm really interested to see what happens with Corinthians. It sounds like that's going to be one way or the other a very toxic end to the season for them.
Yeah,
I guess it's time to head into hot takes. I guess I'll start off first.
Yeah.
So there's a rumor going around. So I know one of my favorite punching bags on the show is Texas Motor Speedway. How I constantly complain about how it's by far the worst track in the NASCAR schedule, that they need to get rid of it. It produces horrible, horrible racing. But there is a rumor that apparently the organizers of the track are planning on effectively tearing it up and just starting over from scratch. And I really hope that is true. I'm not sure exactly what they're going to do. They haven't confirmed anything. They could try to make it a short track. The Auto Club Speedway in California is already doing that. They're taking that from a 2 mile to a half-mile short track. They could do that. They could try to do a super speedway. They could try to make it like a Daytona Talladega or do what Atlanta has done and convert their 1.5 miles into a super speedway. Whatever they do, it has to be. There's no way it could be any worse than the track they have now. If it somehow is, then racing in the Dallas-Fort Worth area is going to be dead as we know it, and the only track they're going to go to in the state of Texas is the Circuit of the Americas down in Austin. This is basically a chance for Texas Motor Speedway to succeed in the long run. So, going to be a huge, huge renovation project for Texas if it's true, and I certainly hope they make it a much better and a much more watchable product.
Yeah, I think that's good because again, Texas has a really big tradition on NASCAR. It feels like the second or even third state that breeds NASCAR. No Florida number one, especially because of Daytona. But
Well, I mean, really, North Carolina is the mainstay, and the thing about Texas is, a lot of fans hold a big grudge against it because Texas took off. So one of the original tracks in NASCAR says short track in Western North Carolina called North Wilkesboro. And it's a half-mile short track, and they booted it off the schedule in 1996 to bring on Texas in 1997. So a lot of people hate Texas for that reason alone. And then on top of that reason for kicking off a fan favorite in North Carolina, which is really where NASCAR was born, in the hills of North Carolina, and then you had Daytona, of course. So like the Carolinas, East Tennessee, Virginia, Florida, Georgia. I mean, that's really the hotbed of NASCAR. Like Texas historically really hasn't been a NASCAR area. They had a speedway there around College Station in the 80s. Didn't really work because facilities weren't really good. But they tried to go to Dallas, and it initially was working really well, but the racing hasn't been that good, so their attendance has gone downhill over time. So really, Texas has not been a truly big NASCAR state, but it's such a big market that they've been chasing it. And they have a certified hit down in Austin with Circuit of the Americas, but they got to figure out something about the Dallas track, or otherwise they're going to lose that market completely.
Oh yeah. I feel like it's hard to manage that with all that historic, all the history behind. I feel like Texas should really do something to improve their image in NASCAR. That's a fair point.
Absolutely.
But my hot take is, so today FIFA announced that they're punishing, both, they're kind of, canceling the game. I don't know if you remember, last September, Brazil and Argentina were playing in Sao Paulo for the qualifying, South America qualifying for the World Cup. The game was suspended 5 minutes in because 4 Argentinian players did not follow COVID protocol rules when they got into Brazil. And basically, they lied in the application when they got into the country in the airport. Then the authority, the kind of like the CDC of Brazil, Anvisa, tried to go to their hotel on Saturday and Sunday. They did not. They closed in their bedroom, their hotel bedrooms. They did not. They hide from Anvisa. Then they sneak on the back to go to the stadium. When they got to the stadium, again, the CDC of Brazil, Anvisa, wanted to try to, go talk to them again, especially the 4 players who lie in their application. They locked themselves in the locker room. And then they got sneaky. They got into the field. The game was 5 minutes in, and the Anvisa inspectors called the game off, saying there were 4 players who did not follow COVID protocol rules, especially lie in their application. So the game was suspended, and now it's canceled. There's not going to be Brazil-Argentina game, played again. No, let's say this game was called off. But FIFA punished Brazil 1.6 million reais and Argentina only 8,000 reais, which is ridiculous because Brazil is being punished for what? For to have, their government employees doing their jobs,
Yeah, I
Basically,
mean, so basically, FIFA does not respect uh, Brazil's laws. Like they don't respect them as a nation state.
yeah, a journalist that I really like, Hika Perrone, compares like Brazil is like the kid who gets bullied at school and gets their lunch money stolen and does not do anything when they face with those situations. Like Brazil is basically ridicularized in South America. It's like Brazil should not be punished. Brazil didn't do anything wrong. The government of Brazil were trying to enforce a COVID protocol rules. The Argentinians literally lie and probably should have faced prosecution if it was a serious country. The only thing the government employees from Anvisa wanted was those four players who lied their application to leave the game and go into quarantine. Because back then, I think when you went from England to Brazil, you had to like go to a 5-day quarantine because of there was a different time. I think you probably remember last year was more strict, but still, like Brazil was only punished because the government, trying to enforce their rules, which Argentina, I feel like Argentina got away with it. They should be the punished not only with 1.6. I feel like should be like 3 million reais, and half of that money should have gone to Brazil to maybe reparations, maybe for causing. I know there was no spectators on that game, but if it was, you should have paid back the tickets.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it really does sound like the Argentina should be paying Brazil back for hosting the game because I'm sure it costs money to like go to set up the game to meet COVID protocols, and it's insane to me because like FIFA's already taken enough in Brazil as it is. I mean, that all the stuff they forced them to do to host the 2014 World Cup, just making them change laws and everything else. FIFA probably thinks they can just go into any country or do whatever they want,
Yeah,
but FIFA does not supersede any nation state.
and of course Brazil I think is gonna pay because again, do you want to go against FIFA when you have the World Cup only 3 months away? No, you don't want that. You probably they're gonna pay it, but and it's not only about the money. Probably the Brazilian Confederation and CBF has that money. What matters is Brazil got screwed. Brazil got ridicularized and punished for nothing.
Honestly, what would FIFA do? I mean, I know they could potentially try to like try to get officiating against you or whatever, but it sounds like they're going to already be against you anyway. So I mean, who's going to force you to pay that fine? I mean, I guess they'll have to take you to the ICJ or something like that.
They can probably get to CAS, which is I think is like a sports, the Court of Arbitration for Sport, which is in Switzerland, is also where FIFA is. So
Yes.
you don't want to go to CAS, the Court of Arbitration for Sport.
Yeah, it just sounds like we need some more countries to have a backbone against them. Like, I'm very curious to see if FIFA's going to try to push around the U.S. But I mean, the U.S. though, I feel like they have a much harder time pushing around like the U.S. for example, and telling them what to do. Because the
I
U.S. is
think
just like it's like we don't need the FIFA World Cup. It's cool that we're going to have it, but we don't need it. You know?
Yeah, that's true. It's more like Brazil gets pushed away because Brazil is like a one sport culture. It's all about soccer. America sees soccer as like this, oh cool that we're having, but it's like their fifth option, fourth option.
Yeah.
It's only if there was like a football World Cup, maybe then America would be, or even in I don't know because basketball and baseball have world tournaments, and you don't see fans caring about the World Baseball Classic or the FIBA World Cup.
I can just think like if the FIFA tried to punish the U.S. with a monetary fine over some situation like this, the average American response would be just so like screw them, don't pay the fine. We are America. We don't care.
I think it is sad as I say. I think you wouldn't go to that point. Probably if that would have happened and Americans would lie in their COVID protocols, when they got here, they would have. It probably, they wouldn't be by the CDC. Probably it would be federal agents going to the hotels, breaking the rule, breaking their rooms, and enforcing. It's like Brazil. always bends over to Argentina. This gotta stop. Brazil always bends over to Argentina. It's like we don't want to upset them. It's like you have clear racism episodes in Brazil from Argentinian fans in Libertadores 3 times, and one of the times the guy literally was displaying a monkey in front of black fans from Corinthians. He paid the bail, posted a Instagram story with the monkey emoji, and just ran away from Argentina with the help of the Argentina government because the Argentinian ambassador paid the bail.
Yeah, it does sound like an uneven relationship, and it sounds like your government should be demanding more out of the Argentine government.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous. Like we can't. It's one sided. Like I think like Brazil has so much admiration and so much this glorification of Argentina, and Argentina envy Brazil, hates Brazil, kind of wish Brazil go drop dead. That's the kind of relationship between Brazil and Argentina. Brazil glorifies and kind of like create this mystic around Argentina. Argentina sees Brazil with envy and hatred.
Yeah, it certainly just as an outsider looking at it, it doesn't sound like a good relationship, and I hope the culturally they can resolve it. I mean, because that type of thing, if left unsolved, can boil over eventually. So I hope for the sake of all Brazilians and Argentines that that some of that stuff can get figured out. But I think it's time for. Oh, go ahead.
No, just say and their economy needs our economy because they're in scrambles right now, and Brazilian tourists really gets them a lot of money. But that's it for my argument. I'm just saying it's ridiculous.
Yeah, so that ends 2 countries, 2 Americas, all sports. We apologize if any Argentinians were offended in the making of this episode. Gus doesn't, but I will just as the neutral American in this situation who has no dog in the fight. But this was episode 30 of 2 countries, 2 Americas, all sports. We are getting closer and closer. About 2 to 3 episodes from now, we'll be reacting to football games. That is going to be super, super exciting. For Gus Tomazeli, the Americana, Sao Paulo, Brazil, I'm Nicholas Hill in Chattanooga, Tennessee, the United States, and you have been listening or watching 2 countries, 2 Americas, all sports. Have a great day, everyone.
Penetrating through your body armor.